but I've got nothing to hide. Well, you know, actually, I say that, but
Yeah, the secrets end here.
yeah, yeah, exactly. You're not going to hear where the bodies are buried.
Listening to Way Out Radio with me, DJ Paula Frost, and today we are super honoured to have the amazing Zounds on the show. Yes, we've got Steve, the lead singer, with us. Zounds are a Reading-based Anarcho punk band formed 1977 who released their music on Crass Records and Rough Trade. Being outside of the music industry, they released songs like Subvert, War and Kanchi Karma. They became an essential band in the post-punk movement, and you can still see them perform live today at festivals like Rebellion. How you doing, Steve?
Yeah, really good. Thanks, Paula. Yeah, great. Yeah.
Excellent. So, I mean, I know that you did live by Hyde Park for a while. Are you in London now or in Reading?
No. I kind of moved away from Reading and sort of travelled around quite a bit. But I live down in the West Country now, in Somerset, near Bristol.
Oh, nice. Cool. There's a good music scene there, isn't there?
Yeah, and there's a few other people that live down here. Mark from the Mob lives down here, and Dick from the Subhumans, and you know, a lot of other people. So yeah, it's very cool down in the West. Yeah.
Great. That sounds amazing. Yeah, I love Dick Lucas's new album, The Culture Shock. They just done a new one.
Yeah. So we kind of, you know, we all live round here, and it's quite a nice scene, really, and a lot of good bands. And Bristol's a very happening place, you know. There's a lot of punk rock, but there's also a lot of other stuff going on, a lot of electronic stuff, and that. So it's a pretty vibrant scene there. And cool. Bristol obviously is always in the news, because if there's going to be a riot or a rebellion or something,
they'll have it.
It seems to be the place. Yeah.
Wicked.
Yeah.
So outside of the punk stuff, I mean, I know you're quite an open guy. Do you like electronic music and that sort of thing as well?
Yeah, I like all sorts of things. So yeah, I mean, I've always liked all kinds of music, and I've always liked electronic music, and I was very much into like the early 70s kind of German bands.
Yeah.
And all that, which, you know, actually is a lot easier to hear these days than it was then. So I kind of always like that. But, you know, I also like, you know, blues and country music and everything, really. I mean, with music, it's not really particularly sort of any genres that you know, I'm not into. It's just like different music from different areas sometimes, you know, somehow kind of touch me, and I suppose that's the same for everybody. And you know, it could be a country song, or it could be like a hardcore sort of like noise industrial thing, you know, or whatever. So I like to stay open to all things, you know. And I mean, that was one of the sort of slightly frustrating things in those early days that we were playing sort of, you know, at punk gigs and stuff, was you kind of felt in some places people really wanted a specific kind of sound, and you know, if you deviated from that at all, then you know, they weren't really into that, which is strange, really, because you know, you think of people who you know, who are sympathetic towards kind of ideas of anarchism or freedom or liberty or liberation, call it what you will, would also be open in their kind of tastes, and you know, that wasn't always the case. I think it's better now, actually. I think people are a lot less kind of tribal than they used to be. So yeah,
I think it was it's actually a Hitler quote, but he said, if you can't make the man on the street understand your message, then it won't get across. And sometimes punk's a bit like that. It's like, oh, why isn't this like exactly what I want? Like, you know, guitar. Distortion.
Just this is what I like and this is what I want, and I don't want to see anything outside of it. And
yeah. So yeah, about the early days, it was so you started off in Reading, and I mean it's famous for Reading Festival, but actually there's not a great music scene here. I've lived here for a long time, so I was just wondering. Yeah.
Oh right, okay, yeah. No, Reading there was never anything happening in Reading.
Yeah.
We played in Reading a few years ago. At a pub. I can't remember what it was called. It was a really
Bar.
Sorry?
Was it Face Bar or Purple Turtle?
No, I can't remember. It was down. It was sort of like I can't even remember what all the different areas are called. It was like maybe about 3 or 4 years ago, and it was, I don't know, some guy just got in touch with me, and it was a very nice gig actually. And somebody, it was quite funny because somebody came up to me and said, "Oh, Zounds, you looks like the best band from Reading." And I thought, actually, that's all I ever really wanted to be, was the best from Reading.
That's excellent. Badge of honor.
Yeah, but yeah, no, nothing was ever happening in Reading. And like, to be honest, by the time Zounds formed, I mean, I'm from Reading, but I'd kind of like moved away, and I was living up in Oxford for a while. But I had friends still living in, down, not in Reading, but kind of in Berkshire, because I went to Bracknell College for a while.
Oh, right, okay.
Yeah, I got chucked out like after months because they didn't make you go to the lessons, and I was a bit stupid and thought, well, if they're not going to make you go, why would you go? So we kind of played around, that sort of like Reading, Bracknell, kind of Oxford area, first of all. But there was really, when I was a kid, it was really difficult in Reading. There was nothing. There weren't really very many bands. There were, I mean, the thing I used to do when I was a kid, the places I used to see bands was Reading University.
Yeah.
And they had quite a lot of interesting things. And there was like a weird thing with Reading University, because like when big bands were doing tours, they'd often do warm-up gigs at Reading University. So sometimes they'd have people like Pink Floyd or The Who or whatever, just do secret gigs, and as a warm-up. Yeah. So yeah, I had to move away from Reading as soon as possible, to be honest.
Yeah, I feel that.
So what about now? Is it? Nothing's changed.
Same. It's the same as you're saying, except we would never have a secret gig from The Who, but probably got worse.
Yeah.
More like the Pigeon Detectives or something.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I wanted to ask how your band went from jamming into the punk kind of route. I mean, were you listening to? I mean, was it Velvet Underground, Sex Pistols? What were your first influences?
Yeah, I mean, obviously when I was a kid, and like a lot of people, in all the bands at that era, we all grew up in the 1960s. So like the first thing you're hearing is all those 60s pop records, like the Beatles, the Rolling Stones, the Kinks, the Who, and and also like lots of Tamla Motown stuff, and Trojan reggae was coming through. So I mean, it was really, I mean, maybe everybody says that, but it was really great time to be like a kid at school if you liked music and stuff, because there was just all this stuff happening. And then I kind of got into, I was so disenchanted with everything, and I left school and I really didn't know what to do, and I ended up working in factories around Reading, and I just thought, this is, I really didn't think my life was going to be like this.
It's too bleak.
Yeah, so I ended up going on the dole and sort of going around to like hippie free festivals, with which I really liked, you know. And so originally we were kind of, and we got the band together, and we were just like jamming at festivals and these sort of things, and then the punk thing started to happen, and it just seemed like, although we weren't playing anything like punk music really, we I don't know, we just kind of like gravitated towards what was going on, and through people we knew, we got to know people like you know, ATV and Patrick Fitzgerald, and sort of like come into contact with The Fall and people like this, and that was all really exciting. And we ended up doing these free tours. So, you know, it was like 3 or 4 bands. There was us and the Mob and the Astronauts and this woman's band, the Androids of Mew. And we just got this bus and we just toured around playing clubs and taking collections and stuff. So, so, you know, and that way we just got to play all over the country. And while we were doing that, you know, everything was politically, socially, it was all becoming a lot harder. Rise of the National Front, all that stuff, you know, you see on the documentaries, and our music just kind of started to, you know, the lineup changed, and basically I kind of was the person who was doing the singing and writing, and I was writing like shorter songs and kind of more, you know, just writing about our lives really, which is always the thing, you know, that I say, I suppose, is like, you know, I wasn't setting out to write political songs about a situation. I really was just writing about what was happening in our lives, you know, with, you know, bringing cruise missiles and building cruise missile bases here, and, you know, like housing crisis, and you couldn't get anywhere to live, and jobs were really fucking boring and horrible, and, you know, so it was all that stuff. It wasn't like I was trying to make a point about it. I was just writing about the lives that we were living. I guess a lot of people, it was the same, you know.
Yeah. No, I've been I just pulling up the lyrics to your song "This Land," and I think like when you listen to that track, it's like it could easily just be printed as a poem, couldn't it? It's just really vivid and full like story. Really
yeah,
good.
well, that's very nice of you to say. Yeah, I mean, with something like that, you know, because you've got that, you know, obviously the sort of inspiration for it is the Woody Guthrie folk song, you know, the American song. This is your land. This is, and I wanted to kind of take that idea because, and the other thing I wanted to do was to start it off, you know, so it's sort of. You know, it's quite wide. It's talking about the land, and then it's talking about the town, and then it's talking about the street. So it goes like from the macrocosm to the microcosm. I mean, as a writer, you don't know if people really get that or not, but you know, you kind of
you do it anyway.
You do it anyway, yeah, because like you're into writing. So and if what you write, you know, means something to somebody, then that's, you know, that's really great, you know.
Yeah, definitely. And you know, you said you were playing the squat parties, the free festivals, and you had a really good relationship with the Mob. I mean, what point was the politicization coming in? Because it was like against, obviously Thatcher was a problem, the Cold War you guys talked about, and was it from going to the festivals that you started to get interested in fighting back against that?
The thing is, when you were going to festivals and you were also, you know, smoking a lot of dope and taking acid, which we were all doing, you know, there's no point lying about it. You know, what the first thing that happens is you come into conflict with the police, you know, and then you decide you're going to go to a festival, and that brings you into further conflict with the police, because a lot of the times these things are illegal, or that even if they're legal, they want to stop you and harass you. So you're immediately aware that there's a whole power structure going on. And as you say, like Thatcher was elected, and it just looked like things were going to get harder and harder. And you know, the police were just kind of running riot around the streets, you know, in London. You had people like the SPG, and then up around like Birmingham, that West Midlands Crime Squad, and they're just harassing people all the time, and often quite brutal. So you were just really aware, and then in terms of, I mean, to be honest, I didn't want to have a job, I never wanted a job. I think, I'd like to have a whole different kind of way of living where work and play are much more kind of integrated. But, whether that's ever a realistic possibility, I don't know. But that's what I'm going for.
But by God, I'll give it a go.
Yeah, exactly. But, a lot of people did, were into that thing of working. And there's masses of people unemployed, couldn't get jobs, and life was very, very tough for people. Housing was really difficult to get. So you were just up against it, and it was becoming harder and harder, and then you have things like, the miners, the Zounds had actually split up by the time of the miners' strike, but all throughout that 80s period, it just got harder and harder. And of course, people remember it for yuppies and the city, and like the Chic record, Good Times, really kind of sums up like one whole sort of aspect of society there, the people with the money. I mean, I don't think Chic were kind of celebrating that. Chic was saying that, well, this is what's going on, but but is that everything was glossy and about greed is good, and really the 80s I thought was a horrible time, really
those
horrible.
Horrendous shoulder pads as well.
Yeah, well, exactly. Yeah, even just for that,
just cancel the 80s.
yeah, exactly. Yeah.
So, like, you've been mentioning like the free festivals, playing shows, and just having a whip round at the end. That's really cool and something you really don't see anymore. I mean, do you think it's possible to do that anymore, or is it just kind of you have to have a fee now?
Yeah, it's really strange the way that the whole kind of the whole sort of like music thing has developed, because it's interesting because like I know you say the stuff you do, it's DIY, and it was the same with us, and we'd make cassettes and photocopy the inlays and sell them at gigs and make sort of fanzines ourselves, and we were very much into that whole DIY thing. Well, now in the modern world, you have so many tools to do that. You can have a laptop, and you can have on that laptop, you can have more recording capability than the Beatles used to record Sergeant Pepper, or I mean, it's just a different world. And then you can make a video on that same computer, with all top line effects, and you've probably shot it on your phone, which is better quality than any camera you used to have, and then you can like put it online, and in a day you can off with nothing, and by the end of it be a YouTube influencer, who knows, but so in a way everything's so much easier than it was. But I don't know if it's just a thing, but people I know in bands, they're always talking about what they're talking about now. We just wanted to do gigs and get around. What you hear now is people kind of like building their audience, and their demographic, and their how to build a fan base. Yeah, I mean, that's the way of the world now, and I'm not knocking the kids or whatever, because that's the world they're living in. But that would have been anathema to us, the idea of thinking that we're building our fan base. We just we were very naive as well, just wanted to go out and play and have a good time and meet people, and they kind of like change things and change people's minds at the same time.
And that's the most magical thing, is like what even this lockdown has taught us, is that you can have all this amazing stuff on the computer, but just personal human interaction, like a good gig and meeting people and dancing, is just so powerful, and there's nothing you can ever replace that with.
I mean, those feelings of kind of just being together, that sort of communal experience,
so powerful.
Yeah, it's so powerful, and it's really kind of, it's really enriching and kind of, it gives you a bit of energy and a bit of life force, and keeps you going. And I think a lot of people are missing that. That's the thing about the lockdown. I hear some people saying, oh, well, a lot of people will be scared to go out. They're not used to socializing and that. I mean, my feeling is that people are raring to go.
Yeah.
They really want to get out and have contact with other people. They've really been missing it.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, no, even if I go out in my car now and it's like, woo, look at me. It's
Yeah,
like, I can't believe I'm out. Look at that hill. It's
I
like
know.
more appreciation. It's almost like back in the day if you took an acid trip and you're like, look at that beautiful flower all of a sudden.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, like, I never realised that stain on the wall was so fantastic.
It's epic.
Yeah.
All
Yeah.
right.
So yeah, who knows how it's going to develop? Yeah.
Yeah, no, definitely. We just got to ride the wave, really. But no, I'm definitely appreciating gigs and stuff. I remember I went to a Rage Against the Machine gig and everybody jumped at the same time on the first note of like that song that's like, fuck you, I won't do what you tell me. And it actually measured on the Richter scale what they used to measure earthquakes. I was like, that's amazing.
Yeah. Making our mark on the earth.
Yeah. It's so good. Um,
Yeah.
I, I wanted to ask you about a legend, which was the way you met Crass. So the story goes that your van broke down and it happened to be near Dial House, and then they helped you. Is that true?
That's absolutely true.
Cool.
It's just because we were on one of these free tours, and like everywhere we were going, like there were posters up for Crass and the Poison Girls, and it seemed like we were playing at all the same places, and people were asking if we knew them, which we didn't. And to be honest, I hadn't even heard their music at that point. Anyway, somebody gave us their address and said maybe you should drop in. And then, as it happened, the bus did break down, really close to their house. So some of us just went down there and like hung out with them, and then they came back and helped us fix it. And that, it's like one of those. I can imagine some like cheesy showbiz film. This is how they got their big
Hey,
break.
it's the Jackson 5. Oh, I'm Nile Rodgers. Like...
So yeah, we just we just got on really well with them. We had a lot of the same ideas. I mean, we had kind of different approaches to things. They were really kind of serious and organized and very focused on what they were doing, and we were just like kind of stoned children who very disorganized, but we had the same ideas as them, but we were just like, we were like, I don't know, we were that's exactly what we were like, stoned children.
Be the documentary title, Zounds,
yeah.
Stone Children.
and they were like grown-ups, and really kind of had their shit together, and but we really liked them. And then through them we got to know Poison Girls as well, who were really, really great people. So and that's really how we kind of like connected with that scene. Which is, and those connections still happening now. But the Mob, we'd known them a long time before. It seemed like a long time. None of this, all this stuff happened, in sort of like, a few years, 3 or 4 years. Like it went on for ages. But yeah, we played with the Mob a lot, but they were basically a bunch of speed freaks, and they were really into causing trouble. Not so much Mark, but Curtis and Graham were troublemakers. But they were, they were kind of, I say they were great fun. I mean, me and Curtis is the only person I've ever had a fight with, I have to say, the bass player with the Mob. But we're all good now.
Yeah, you know, you got to have a fight with someone in a band called the Mob.
Yeah.
You know, just
Well, exactly.
makes sense.
Yeah.
They got to keep their reputation up at least.
Exactly. Yeah. So yeah.
Yeah, I just wanted to ask you about so your EP Zounds, You Can't Cheat Karma came out on Crass Records in 1980. So tell me about recording that and how you sort of decided to do that.
Well, we'd got to know Crass, and they said that they'd they wanted to bring out a record with us. So they asked us to go over and play some songs to Penny. So we went to their practice room at Dial House and we went through a few songs. And well, we wanted to do War and Subvert, which we'd done a sort of demo of, and Penny really liked it and wanted to put them out. And then he wanted another song. So we played a few songs and we played Kanchi Karma. And Penny just said, that's the one. But yeah. I think he decided as soon as he heard the title, because like Penny is a bit of an old beatnik, you know, and he loves all that and Zen, you know, yin and yang stuff. So, yeah, he is. So as soon as he heard it was called Kanchi Karma, I think his eyes lit up, you know, and he thought, oh yeah, I can relate to that. Yeah. And so he said,
talking my talk.
Do that one. And they kind of put that as like the A side, whereas I thought of Subvert really was kind of like the main song. But yeah, so we decided to do that, and then we recorded it at Southern Records. They had a friend of Penny's called John, who produced all their records and ran their business. He had a house in Wood Green, and the garage had been, you know, turned into a control room. And it was really well kitted out. It's like state of the art kind of 24-track studio. But then you actually recorded in his living room. He'd kind of soundproofed it all, and then the control desk and everything was like in this garage. So basically, we went in and recorded it. It was really difficult because they insisted that we use a session drummer and not use Joe's, which I thought was really strange and not really like within the spirit of what we were doing, you know, because I felt that be authentic. And in the end, we kind of, we relented. And so Joseph played the parts, and this session drummer, who was brilliant, turned up. He said, I'm going to play anything different. I'm going to play what you play, but I'm going to play it right. I'm going to play it first time. So Joseph played through it a couple of times. The guy said, okay. And he sat down and he just did it, you know, and he was obviously a professional, you know, because he hitting the drums really hard. And he was brilliant, I have to say, but it just felt wrong. It felt really wrong to me that, you know, Crass was supposed to be kind of like, you know, the epitome of sort of like integrity and honesty, and I felt it was dishonest, and you know, it probably made it a better record. But so, and then we just went off and they mixed it and did everything. We gave them some stuff for the artwork and they cut it all up and made it look how they wanted it. So they were very much in control, you know. And the whole sound of the record, it isn't how we really wanted it. And I know Flux of Pink Indians say this with that, you know, and
a lot
the Mob,
of people do with something,
you know, but Crass had a particular way of doing things. And the thing I'll say is, like, nobody forced anybody to be on Crass Records, you know. And even after the recording, if any of us had said we don't like it, we don't want it to go out, they wouldn't have put it out, you know. I always found them kind of like fine like that, but we were okay with it. And actually, I've got to like the record over the years, you know. But you can't always, when you do something, you can't always see what it is that other people like about it, you know.
It's so good, mate. It's so good.
That's very nice. say so, yeah.
And it stands out, like if you go to Rebellion and you got distorted guitar, rah 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 all day long, then there's certain key tracks and key bands like yourselves that just, you know, a Subvert comes on and you just go, fucking hell, that's melodic and poetic. Like it's
yeah,
just
but still, hopefully with all the energy, you know, and I know it's weird about Kanchi Karma because I just thought, oh, I'm not sure it's that, you know, one of my better songs. And then we had this like the middle 8-bit in it, and then and then I came across this book by Julian Cope, and he said Kanchi Karma is the best post-punk record ever made, and like the middle 8 in it is like the best middle 8 of any record ever. And I was thinking, shit, we dropped the middle 8 from it. We never even play that live. Good. Maybe I need to rethink this. Yeah, I think they had a particular kind of sound, and it was quite a thin sound. But I think it was, I think it was good. You know, it would be very easy for us, and the same with Flux, just have, you know, huge, great guitars, and then I think, you know, maybe like the character of the song wouldn't have come across. So, you know, I'm kind of happy with it, how it all turned out.
Yeah, definitely. And I wanted to ask.
I think I'm not sure if I should say this.
Go on.
I think they're bringing all those records out again.
Yay!
You know, like I don't know. I'm always in two minds about things like that. You know, I think, well, people have already got them. You know, do they need to buy them again? I thought the world was like dying from like us using too much plastic and too much resources. But, you know, whatever, it's out of my control. So, you know, but it's nice. I mean, I'm always amazed, like when we've played in America, which we have a bit more in recent years, you know, because we couldn't go there for years because I couldn't fly. I was absolutely terrified of flying, and I got over that. I got hypnotized or something. And cool. Anyway, we go to America, and loads of like teenagers and young people turn up, and it always amazes me that they find any relevance in the music. But a lot of them say, you know, you just don't find bands that are kind of talking about those things, and that they still find those things relevant, which actually is quite sad to me. I'd like them all to be irrelevant and consigned to history, you know, but so you know, I suppose it's good to kind of bring them out because people like them, you know. And I even when I was a kid, I was liked old records, you know. I liked old records or old sort of like country records or whatever, and you know, so you know.
We got the Tories again, so you know, like we can still relate to those messages from 40 years ago. We're like,
I can't fucking believe it. You know, how will people ever learn? I don't know.
Yeah. It's interesting what you were saying there about the younger people, because I saw in like a picture yesterday, like a tabloid OK magazine, horrible, that sort of world, and it's like one of the Kardashians is going out with Travis Barker, who's in Blink-182, and he's wearing a Subhumans t-shirt, and I'm like, wow, like so many people are going to see that and look it up. This is really good.
Yeah, I know, that's really weird. Well, like the time that David Beckham wore a Crass t-shirt.
Yeah.
Sort of like Diamante thing, all done in these kind of jewels and whatever, and I mean, I'm sure he didn't know what it was, but somebody had just told him to wear it or whatever, and then people see it. Yeah, it's weird how these kind of messages get out. Yeah,
no, it's good. It's like, I mean, with like Angelina Jolie had the Crass symbol on as well, and all of it sort of makes it's annoying that you can't Google that, because Subhumans you can Google that, so you can it's easier to find.
Yes, that's right. Yeah, you go. What is that weird symbol?
Yeah. So I mean, what happened with the split in 82? Were you just tired from touring and that sort of thing?
Yeah, yeah, it was. I don't know. Things had got quite bleak, and we'd done a tour in Britain, which there'd been a lot of trouble at the gigs. You know, I think people forget how violent it used to be, how violent times used to be. You know, like in the 70s and early 80s. I mean, well, and when I was growing up as a kid, you know, there'd always be fights everywhere. You know, I mean, like I grew up in Reading, and there used to be a pub there called the Peacock on Broad Street, and you know, like there was a big skinhead pub, you know, and there was a stabbing there every Friday night. You know,
Wow,
it was,
yeah.
And you know, I'd be sort of like walking about the streets and being chased by skinheads, and you know, there's a lot of pubs you wouldn't go into, and so like, so 81, there started to be a lot of trouble at gigs, and we'd done some gigs in Scotland, and like National Front people were turning up, and it's all like Sieg Heiling, and I was just thinking, well, what is the fuck? And then we got beat up at a gig in Doncaster, and you know, I was just thinking, oh, this is a lot of fucking effort, you know, because you're traipsing around the country, and it often seemed to be cold and raining, and you know, and then we did a tour of Europe, and that was bleak. You know, the van kept breaking down, and it was always cold, and you were staying in these squats with no water, and so it was just getting really hard. And then my girlfriend got pregnant, and you know, there's a lot of weird scenes, because we were all kind of living in this street, Brown Road in Hackney, and like everybody was kind of like living very closely with each other, and it all got very intense, you know. And then Mandy, my girlfriend, got pregnant, so we just, you know, I just kind of had enough of it, and we sort of like moved away from that scene, and the band split up, and I just did like a whole load of other things for years. I mean, I always played music, but just like in local bars and stuff, like in a country band or like rock and roll, just fucking for the fun of it, you know. Because, you know, we really, you know, our aim wasn't really to make it in the music biz. Our aim was to sort of like destroy the music biz, which was a bit of a fucking, you know, grand aim for and such places. But although at the same time, we did want to, you know, like be successful and whatever. But you know, yeah, it was just, you know, and that whole music biz thing is it's really tough as well for people, even people that are making it, you know. In the whatever it was in the 90s, there was, do you remember a band called Lush?
Yeah.
Yeah, well,
they're still going, aren't they?
Well, they split up and they've started going again. Yeah, but and they did a cover of Demystification, and I met one of the women in the band after they'd split up, and I spoke to her, and she was saying the reason they'd split up was because that somebody had put a lot of money into them, and they were bringing out these singles, and they just wanted them to tour all the time and tour in America, and she just said it was like on the road the whole time, and it just got too much for them, and the drummer wanted to have a break, and they said they couldn't have a break, and in the end the drummer, you know, killed himself. And just like, and that was just from like record company pressure, you know, we've put money into you, you know, you've got to tour. So, you know, and because touring, you know, look, all jobs are tough. I've done every fucking job. I've worked in factories, I've been a grave digger, I really have done everything. And but you know, that being on the road all the time, it can be really hard. Pretty hard, yeah, especially like in winter and whatever. But you know, I'm not trying to moan about it. That's why
no, I know what you mean.
I really like the situation we're in now. I mean, not the lockdown thing, but like before the lockdown, you know, we don't play all the time. We play every month, sometimes a couple of times, you know, do a few festivals, maybe go to America. Before lockdown, we went and played in Colombia at a festival, which was amazing. And, you know,
yeah, wow.
So we don't play all the time. I don't, you know, it's not like I need loads of money. I'm not buying stuff all the time. You know, I've got a load of guitars,
Yeah.
and what more do I need? You know,
Yeah.
so I really like the way it is now. You know, maybe go out and do a few gigs, and then you don't play for a while, and
Yeah,
you know.
no, I was just thinking that I went on a tour in Vietnam and Cambodia, just DJing with these other DJs doing reggae and stuff, and it was so brutal because as soon as I landed, then it was straight to the gig and then relentless gigs for 2 weeks, and I was totally disorientated. I didn't know where. I was like covered in mosquito bites. I didn't know where to buy shampoo. I was just like, you know, I need to maintain this like certain image here. I can't be covered in bites all the time. Someone's got to help me.
Yeah. People are turning up to see you, and it's like a special night for them. You could have at least washed your hair, you know.
Yeah, come on, you know. But
yeah. I don't think people realise that, you know, especially when you're like in a different place like that, and it is I mean, it's disorientating even if you weren't doing a gig every night because you're in a different place. But like you're just going from one place, and you know, as you obviously know, a lot of the time you get to a place, you go to the venue, you have something to eat, you do a set, you leave the next day, and you've been to all these places and you don't know anything about them, you know. I'd played in Athens like 3 or 4 times, and I'd never even seen the fucking Acropolis, you know. I'd just seen like the same street and the same, you know, the same streets in and out of Athens to the airport, you know.
Yeah. There's the same. My band went to Barcelona to record an album, and I'd never been before, and I saw more on the way back to the airport than I did the whole week because I was just in a little basement room playing drums the whole week, and then on the way back I was like, whoa, look at that, I haven't seen that before.
Yeah, because you could be anywhere, you know.
Yeah.
So
yeah. And Lush as well. Like, I didn't know who Lush were a few years ago, and John Robb, he from the Membranes, he messaged me and said,
I know John.
Yeah, he's lovely. And he said to me, do you want to go to Lush with me? And I thought, because there's a soap shop called Lush that's in all the malls.
That's right.
And I thought, and I said no, because I thought I was really weird. And then I said to my friend, do you know that John Robb wanted to meet me in a soap shop? And he went, what are you talking about? And he went, Lush is a band.
Yeah. Yes. Yeah, you got that one wrong. Yeah. Yeah, no, they're pretty good, you know. Their version of they did this version of Demystification, which I think actually has Jarvis Cocker singing backing vocals on, not as though I would notice, but because I think it's also like a bit of a Zounds fan, you know. But I never knew any of this for years, you know. Quite a lot of people like Zounds, and it just, you know, you've got to remember that after the band split up, I was doing like a lot of other stuff, and like for years and years, it was like just something that had happened for like 3 years in my life when I was young, and I'd sort of like completely forgotten about it. And nobody that I was mixing with knew anything about Zounds. And a lot more people know about it now. You know, I'm more likely to run into people now that know Zounds than we did at the time. You know, it's like Mark of the Mob says this, you know, a lot of the time, like doing, you know, because you play a gig now and people say, oh, it must have been great in the old days. And they'll say, you know, often if you were playing in London, I mean, it was different if you go play in Belgium or Holland or France or Germany, a lot of people would come, but like in England, you know, it's like if you play in London, you know, it's packed, but if you go out to some other place, there's hardly anybody there, and it's much easier for all those people to come and see you in London than you traipse around playing to like a dozen people in a load of kind of obscure towns.
So
against people that live in obscure towns because I come from one myself.
Yeah, exactly. Become one.
Yeah.
I just wanted to ask you a bit about like the American bands that you were into, because I know you mentioned earlier you like your blues and stuff as well. But what did you think about like Patti Smith, the Ramones, Blondie coming out of like CBGB's New York, Iggy Pop, that sort of era?
Yeah, I mean, we'd always really been into the Velvet Underground, and that was kind of like my entry into all that thing. I mean, you know, it's weird now because everybody says they like the Velvet Underground, but I mean that wasn't my memory of growing up in Reading. You know, I mean,
Yeah,
I knew one other guy in Reading that liked the Velvet Underground, and most of the other people I knew had never heard of them. They're into loads of kind of like dreadful prog rock bands and whatever. But yeah, and then you first started. I think the first Patti Smith album I just thought was absolutely mind-blowing. You know, when that came out,
yeah,
you know, and we got it as soon as it came out, and I just thought that was absolutely incredible. And that was a big influence on me, I would say. You know, both in terms of music and the way it's produced and lyrics. I mean, I think there's about a lot of bands. I think a lot of bands' first album is their best album. I don't know why, but you know,
yeah.
I think it's because it's just even like this, you know, even with like the Stooges and, you know, yeah, Raw Power is a great album, but like that first Stooges album is just so primitive and like nothing. I mean, all their albums are great, but it's because it's the first time you hear it, I suppose, you know.
Yeah.
And so it's really new. So that Patti Smith, mate, yeah, the Ramones. I mean, the Ramones just seemed great, and you know, when you heard the Ramones, I think probably everybody in those days probably had the same sort of like idea of like, my God, that is such a simple, brilliant concept. How come I didn't think of that? Because it is just like exactly what the world needs, you know, a fast, poppy, sort of snotty band. So, yes, that was really good. The early Talking Heads stuff, I love. Talking Heads 77. Television I really liked.
Yeah, fantastic.
Yeah, I mean all that stuff, and Jonathan Richman. I mean, I love Jonathan Richman and the Modern Lovers, and actually I still love him to this day, and I still go and see him when he comes to England. I actually, when I went to San Francisco a few years ago, I actually met him, but I get a bit, I don't know. I mean, I don't believe anybody should have any heroes, and one person isn't any better than anybody else because they make records. But I do get a little bit starstruck.
Yeah,
so,
yeah,
yeah. So I met him, and he was he's like a lot of artists you meet, you know, absolutely sort of like fucked up and self-absorbed, and you know, which is how it should be. So yeah, I mean, I loved all that stuff. I mean, in England, I always kind of the sort of bands from that era. I always liked the kind of slightly stranger bands. I mean, the Buzzcocks made a really big impression on me. I just thought they were tremendous, and the Fall we really liked a lot. ATV, Wire, I thought were a phenomenal band. You know, so kind of like the slightly weirder side of punk rock, really.
A little bit more.
Yeah, it was great. I mean, the great thing
stuff.
then was just all these. Yeah, I really liked that. You know, but then a lot of reggae. I mean, in the we were listening to a lot of reggae in the early 70s. You know, a lot of dub stuff. You know, Tapazuki, Big Youth, Roy, all of that was really, and the Gladiators, and you know, some of that sort of like harmony stuff. So that was really that was really a big thing with us as well, you know.
I think that's the biggest shame about what happened to the skinheads, because as you mentioned, you have some, you know, like memories of them being like really violent, and they came so far away from the original ska, you know,
Yeah,
beginnings of
yeah,
skinheads.
I mean that's strange, because it was like I doubt if it's still there, but there used to be this place called the Top Rank in Reading. It was like a ballroom, and
Okay.
they had a load, and it was also a place called the Caribbean Club, which was up Silver Street, and it kind of always been a little dance hall. Actually, I ended up playing there, I think, in the 80s, when I was in some band in the late 80s. But it was weird, because I remember when I was a really little kid, it was a ballroom, a place where they taught ballroom, and my mum was a ballroom dancing teacher. It's called the Majestic.
Oh, wow.
But later on, it became the Caribbean Clubs. So they had a lot of people there, and at the Top Rank, so you'd get like Desmond Decker would be playing there, and Ansel Collins, all these people from Trojan, Ken Booth, and all the skinheads would go, and a lot of people from Jamaica and the other islands, and it was all fine. And there was none. I mean, the skinheads in those days, like the skinheads were pretty violent, you know, because I was like trying to grow my hair long and be like a junior hippie, so they were quite open to like chasing me about in Reading, even though I went to school with a lot of them, you know. But you know, but they were always going to those ska nights, you know, a lot of West, because there were a lot of West Indian people at that time in Reading. I don't know if you should call people West Indian. Anyway, Jamaican people from the other islands, lots of kids used to go, and it was fine. And and the whole thing seemed to get really kind of perverted from what it was. Yeah. Although it stopped me going to the football, because there was always like trouble at, you know, the Reading used to play at Elm Park in those days, and like you'd go to the games, and like people were throwing dustbins through people's windows and running up the street. I mean, it happened to me. So I ended up like going to a match, and all these like skinheads running up the road, and I was going to the match. I better run as well, because it's getting late. And suddenly I was running all these people, and everybody was getting out of the way, and I was thinking, fucking hell, this is really exciting. And at that point I thought, yeah, this is really dangerous, because I could see how this could be an addictive sort of behavior.
Yeah, you got it.
A group of like young blokes, and you're running down the road, people are terrified.
Yeah.
So I can see why people get attracted to that. But, you know, yeah, it's not for me. I'm more like the sort of person that sits at home putting their records in alphabetical order.
Yeah. No, I think the police must love us with all these like computers and TVs and stuff, because it's not like that anymore. Like, I mean, I was reading Steve Ignorant's book, and he was saying like at the local pub there would be a gang here and a gang there, and you couldn't go on their territory, or you'd get in a fight with them, and it was like so different, you know.
Yeah, it was really violent, you know. But I mean, having said that, you know, like I ended up living in London for years and years, and all my kids grew up in London, and I think it was the same like when my son was like, you know, 14, 15, 16, 17, those sort of teenage years. You know, he was always coming back with tales of like, you know, people fighting, and there's this gang and there's that gang. And then in London at that time, there was the whole kind of like postcode gang thing going on. And you know, but I don't know. To me, I don't see or encounter the amount of violence that I used to.
Yeah,
you know,
yeah. I think I think they should do more research into like the way people act at festivals, because like psychologically, what makes a man who is usually shy, plain clothes dressed, and like just going where they're going, all of a sudden turn into like this guy with the funny shirt and the crazy glasses and like everyone's best friend. Like how the hell, why does that, like, why do you just let loose at a festival in that way? It's so nice.
Yeah, I think that, I mean, if you kind of, you know, I think these sort of events have kind of always taken place throughout history. And I kind of looked into this at one point, and you have got all these, and you know, you still see it in some sort of little villages and stuff today, where they have these kind of leftovers, these old things. But you'd have things like, they used to have this thing in some villages, the day of the Lord of Misrule. So I'm talking about, you know, in the sort of like
That
in
sounds
medieval
demonic.
times, where everything's reversed, and like, you know,
Right, cool.
you know, all the kind of laborers can act like they're, you know, like they're gentry, and you know, people can do anything. It's like when they have these big massive football matches in villages where everybody just goes fucking mad. Or May Day celebrations. You know, there are a lot of these old ancient traditional folk festivals which I think serves the same purpose, where a lot of straight people just go and, you know, let it all hang out, you know, and it's all kind of really loose for a while, and then they get back on the straight and narrow. Yeah. But I have seen that at festivals, you know, like when we were at Watchfield in 1975, there was a story, this guy had turned up, like, and he was like some businessman, and he'd kind of like taken all his clothes off, put them somewhere, dropped some acid, wandered around for a couple of days, then came down asking people, do you know where I put my clothes somewhere? I don't know where they are. I've got to go back to my wife and family. So it's all, yeah, time to rage.
It's inside all of us.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah.
All right, mate. I'll let you go.
No, Paula, thanks ever so much for taking an interest. I'm
no
just
worries.
Grateful anybody cares at all. So
no, of course, man. Everyone's going to really enjoy this. So thank you. And where's the best place that people can support the band? Should we just go and get some merch on your website?
We're useless at selling merch. I think
just come to a show.
Yeah, just come to a show. Take care, Paul.
Yeah, take care, mate. Thank you so much. Have a lovely weekend.